Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Prosperity Show. I'm Dr. Frank McCune. Poverty is the single most important problem with quality of life and community stability. Poverty has a profound impact on crime, on quality of education, on quality of health. Tonight, we're going to speak with Mr. Kim Wade, who is known to most of us in the Jackson area, entrepreneur, political analyst, and radio personality. We will be talking to you about the public policy and its effect on policy, as well as what we need to do locally to eradicate the same. Thank you. We will be right back. Welcome back to the show. We have with us Mr. Kim Wade. Kim, welcome to the show, and thank you for joining us tonight. Mr. Wade is going to talk to us about this whole notion of poverty. Kim, poverty is considered a state of condition of simply being indigent, poverty, being poor.
Right.
Does that in and of itself create a problem, and if so, in your view, why?
Well, it's an interesting question. My play mom, the late Lenny Ward, would always say, there's nothing wrong with being poor. She said it's so darn inconvenient. And so many people don't like being inconvenienced, I being one of them. But the poverty, when I moved to Mississippi in 1981, Dr. McCune, it wasn't the physical poverty that struck me. And I've been in every county in this state. My job with the phone company allowed me to travel to all the major employers in every county. And what struck me was the poverty of the spirit. The poverty of the spirit is what's exacerbating the physical poverty. And that poverty of the spirit has become more progressive. It has increased since I've been here, because, you know, let's face it, Mississippi has always been known as a poor state, but the people in Mississippi never consider themselves as poor.
Okay.
But it's just this constant message from those who are trying to help the poor that leads them to believe that they're living in lack and without. Because there was a gentleman told me a joke one time. He said the census taker back in the 40s came to his mother and father's house, and he was in the taking the census, and, you know, the kids had to get out of the room when adults were in there. And so they were listening to the man through the door there, and the census taker was asking about the income, and he said, Mom, to Mr. Smith, Miss Smith, what was your income last year? And they gave him a number, and the census taker looked up from his notes. He said, my God, you people are living in poverty. He said, we the kids, we all back to, oh my God, what Dad done got us into now? Because they didn't know they were poor, because he provided. They had food. You know, they had the things that they need, but as far as, you know, to the outside world, they were living in poverty. So a lot of the poverty, it is real. I don't want to dismiss that. The lack is real. But a lot of it is compounded by people constantly telling you that you're in poverty.
You have been known to take approaches, let me put it that way, approaches that were certainly not mainstream. Right. And I think that's one of the interesting aspects of your career as I have watched it, particularly on your radio show, and you've been in radio for 16 years and you've survived it. So apparently you have been saying some things that were right, because incentives matter in economics, as we well know. But how have you viewed public policy? You mentioned public policy and their correction of poverty. Give us some of your views on how public policy has added to or exacerbated the poverty issue, or how public policy has helped to correct it, either one.
I think public policy for some years was, in fact, making inroads in terms of the physical poverty that people were living in here, not only in Mississippi, but across the nation. Here in Jackson, the same thing. But what we have now, poverty has become an industry. It's like the recording industry, the auto industry, and there are people who are happy with the status quo. Chris Rock has a line in one of his comedy on one of his comedy tours. He said, the money's not in the solution. The money's in the comeback, keeping them come back for more. And so we're seeing now with public policy, just in today's news, they're talking about extending unemployment benefits beyond the 99 weeks, which is over 2 years, or close to 2 years now, and they want to extend it beyond that. So there's no incentive. They're de-incentivizing people to get out there and be the best that they can be. I don't want to go Pollyanna and go into the abstract and say that, capitalism is without its faults. But let's face it, hunger pains is a good motivator. That's how mankind has been able to procreate and promote itself over the time since man was put on this planet. So when you take this incentive and you give people just enough to survive, you're taking the incentive and the ingenuity that comes from hunger pains that motivate you. As my grandmother said, hard times will make a monkey eat red peppers like potato chips. So we're losing that incentive.
Your grandmama was a wise woman. Now, specifically, you said they have done some good things, and now it's an industry, meaning that it has a balance sheet. You've got assets and liabilities, you have expenses, and you have income off of poverty. Is that correct?
Right. Right.
I mean, and meaning that some people now are making money off of poverty. Is that what I mean?
They're not only they're making money off all of our social pathologies, up and down the line. We have venerable institutions that have made their mark on society and made lasting changes for the benefit, in my view, of society. For instance, like the NAACP, started out with the best of intentions and has done great things over the years. But now they're part of the those who benefit from the social pathologies. As an example, the state local board of the NAACP, the state local president of the NAACP vehemently opposes school vouchers, private school funding, or charter schools, anything that would give the parent an alternative in terms of the education of their kids. And yet we see graduation rates continuing to drop. We see our kids, 15, 16-year-olds here in Jackson. We had a 16-year-old accused of kidnapping a Belhaven student. He's 16 years old. Dr. McCune, 10 years ago, he was 6 years old. Where did we lose him? But you got people who are making money off the fact that he's going to need remediation at certain points. And then the head of the NAACP on the national level, there's an article in Black Enterprise from last month in which Mr. Ben Jealous says, well, his main concern seems to be whether or not that person, this 16-year-old who's probably going to spend the next 20, 30 years in Parchman, his biggest concern is whether or not that man's going to be able to vote. That's sickening. There's something wrong with the policies that are being promoted by our government, local, state, and national, and these nonprofits who are there for the benefit of those who, their constituents who they say are worse off because of poverty, et cetera. So what I'm saying is we need a top-to-bottom review of where we're going with our attempts to aid the poor. Sometimes it might be better off we would just leave the poor alone because we're causing more damage, we're causing generational damage.
Okay, now I know personally a little of your interests, in the history of your interests. You've studied Republican policy, you've studied Democratic policy, and you're probably one of the few people who can speak intelligently to both. And recently, you've studied Tea Party philosophy. As a matter of fact, when I told some of our acquaintances that you were coming on the show, and they were saying, well, why would you want to invite a person?
You ruined your reputation, Doc.
Why would you want to run with a person with a Tea Party? So tell us, give us your view and the differences between the three as you know them, because you studied them, and straighten us out on what conservative and liberal really means.
Yeah. The Tea Party movement, first of all, let me just say that I'm not only a supporter, I'm one of the founders of the Tea Party movement here in Mississippi. And I say so proudly.
That's even worse.
Yeah, but you know, Frank, you've been knowing me for years. I don't back away from my positions. I have nothing to apologize for. The Tea Party movement represents both Democrat and Republican constituencies. The Tea Party movement represents American values.
Is it really new?
No, it's not.
The philosophy? Really
oh, absolutely not. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. That's why I said it represents American values, middle-class values. This is why Sarah Palin will remain popular. Now, there are those who don't like Sarah Palin, but there are those who don't care for middle-class American values, don't care for American values. And that's where the tension is coming in. And a lot of it is due to intentional mislabeling and characterization. I was so disappointed when I saw the NAACP release a report from some obscure off-brand, Brand X organization that came out of nowhere, that the Tea Party was a racist organization and they named some associations, et cetera. Well, I'm a former member of the Nation of Islam. Doc, I'm no different than a Ku Klux Klan member in terms of my former past. So if people want to hate me because of my associations with Minister Farrakhan, they're certainly welcome to. But as I said,
and that's a fact. I know that's a fact.
Right. And so for someone to do what the NAACP did in disparaging the Tea Parties, the NAACP and many blacks who dislike the Tea Parties because of what they heard the NAACP say about the Tea Parties, we become what we fought against. That's what that tactic that the NAACP did with that press conference is no different than what the Citizens Council and the Sovereignty Commission did to you guys back in the 60s. Mm-hmm. Frank McCune's a bad guy. Mm-hmm. We need to incarcerate him down at the National Guard Army down on the fairgrounds. They need to be dealt with. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't fair.
Which is a fact.
Right. It is a fact. And you served your country well. As a matter of fact, you left your incarceration down on at the National Guard Army on the fairgrounds and went into Uncle Sam's Army.
That's true.
To serve our country.
That's true.
And so the point is that America is made up of a mosaic of a lot of different viewpoints. And we as African Americans, I would urge us, strongly urge us, if the hatred and the scornfulness of the White Citizens Council was found to be lacking and it was discredited not only by the federal government but by God Almighty in His scriptures, why would we embrace it? There's nothing to be gained by that. And I will say to any black